Get at the stick.
I like that. You know what? Rewind. Let's go from the top again.
Okay.
Hello. Welcome back to All the Horrible Things. I am one of your hosts, Chris Pagnozzi.
And I'm the secondary host. No, co-host. Secondary, that sounds not good. I'm the co-host, Mr. Enan Hennigan, a.k.a. Enan the Barbarian.
Enan the Barbarian.
Yeah.
Welcome back. I am very excited about today's topic. I think just about everybody on the internet is excited about today's topic, as you might see on all the horror blogs, Twitter and whatnot, the Twitterverse. And we're going to be talking about Scream 2022 or Scream 5, if you will. So right now, if you have not seen this movie, you're going to want to turn this off and listen to it next week, because you should go out right now. I'm surprised the internet isn't just dropping these spoilers. You're going to want to go out and see it now, see it as soon as possible, then come back and listen to this, because we're going to do some spoiling.
Yeah, we can't help it. I mean, we can't talk about this justly without really getting to the nitty gritty, getting into the dirt.
Yeah, I don't know why people would review a movie and not, kind of like keep themselves from information.
Well, I guess, you know what? In this case, I think if you're going to see Scream, you're going to see Scream. Nobody's going to convince you to see this new Scream, right? So anybody that's holding back, it's like, I saw some really teeny reviews or stars given, but I did not read any reviews prior to seeing it, because I wanted to be completely surprised, I didn't see the point in it. So we're not trying to convince you to see Scream. You see Scream if you want to see Scream.
Correct.
But you should see it.
Yeah.
Right.
If you saw the episode 2 of All the Horrible Things and it says Scream and you clicked on it, there's a good chance you've already seen it. But we wanted to be the good guys.
Indeed.
Give you a heads up.
Indeed.
So right out of the gate here, I want to talk about the title.
Okay.
Everyone is just referring to this as Scream.
Yeah.
And I think it's because it's been a while since we've gotten one of these movies.
11 years.
No one's saying, hey, have you seen Scream 5? They're like, have you seen either the new Scream or have you seen Scream 2022? Why do you think we're not just labeling this Scream 5?
Well, this is the first one in the series that Sydney's not the one being targeted. In a way, it's kind of a bonus that she ends up in it for those masterminding the whole situation, but really she's not the focus of the mastermind behind everything. So I think that's really what it's about. It's like a new era. Granted, you do have some of the legacy players popping into this, but while they are central to what happens in the latter half, they're not central to the plot being set out by our masterminds.
This was and it's actually a quote later in the movie, but this is a passing of the torch.
Yes.
This was like relaunching this franchise here without Wes Craven. So this was a really nice tribute to him. And I personally think that's why they want it to feel like the original. That's why they're not calling it Scream 5. They don't want you to think that this is, following up to the events of Scream 4 necessarily in a chronological event. What is the term they use in the movie? Is a requel.
It's a requel.
It's a requel. Yeah.
And they brought up a surprising amount of other examples of requels that are out there.
Yeah.
Essentially our new Jemmy Kennedy. He's got a niece and a nephew in this one, because this takes place in Woodsboro again. And she lays it out. Yes, Mindy Meeks, I believe, is our new Jamie Kennedy.
Yeah.
Randy, if you will.
Yeah.
So, yes, she lays it down for us. No fandom is going to be accepting of a crappy sequel. They're going to need something fresh that still calls upon the OG, so that you get kind of like the marrying of two worlds that keeps the new generation interested in seeing something that's old, and the olds coming back to get a taste of what they loved. Yes, us, exactly. The olds.
The olds. Couple of olds talking at you. Would you have, so if this wasn't a requel and this was just a reimagining with a brand new cast, would you have seen this movie?
What would be
Like
the
no
point? I
original
mean,
characters.
the first movie is so amazing because of that surprise element, because of our killers. If you knew that there was something even remotely similar to that that's going to go down, if it was like a proper reboot, I feel like you can get away with a reboot with Texas Chainsaw because you don't
Sure.
have that same mystery behind it. This is a who done it. So once you know who
Right.
done it, you can't do that same movie ever again. A reboot is not possible with Scream. So you have to do a requel or a sequel because it's just not going to work
Yeah.
otherwise.
Well said. Well said. Let's jump into the setting.
Yes, but before we jump into the sets, I'm curious because we mentioned how this one ultimately can be called Scream now because it has a new focus, which is this
Mm.
Melissa Barrera actress as what's her name in it? I'm lost on that again. Sam. She goes by Sam in it.
Yeah,
Um,
not
Nev
Samantha.
Campbell is so iconic, right? She really is the heart of all the movies. I'm not sure the series could have done half as well as it did if you didn't have that palpable pathos that just oozes from Nev Campbell. What did you think about our new lead heroine? Um, is she potentially going to be able to carry the torch similarly?
Yes, I thought Melissa Barrera as Sam was great. I thought she was likable. She seemed like somebody you already wanted to be friends with. And to quote Gail Weathers, oh, actually, did Sidney Prescott say she's tough?
She is tough. No, she definitely was tough. She doesn't take any guff. And granted, we find out this is kind of a big spoiler why she might have kind of a tougher DNA line, if you will,
Yeah, yeah,
heritage because she is the daughter of
yeah,
Billy Loomis.
yeah. She's the
What did you think
bastard
about that?
of. I didn't see it coming. You know
Okay.
what? And as soon as you see Billy Loomis with her in the first scene, you kind of put it together why they cast Melissa Barrera. They almost
Yeah,
have the same eyes. They
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 do.
they really sort of nailed like a obviously it's fake, but like a genetic, like she looks like she could be the daughter of Billy Loomis.
There is something sinister about her too. You know, she's a very
Yes.
beautiful woman, but at the same time, there is that darkness to her that I felt was really highlighted well. But that's okay. So this is a big part of it. She's kind of haunted by Skeet Ulrich slash Billy Loomis, and she kind of sees him because she has her own mental problems. She's taking antipsychotic drugs, I believe.
Yeah.
How did you
Boner
feel?
pills.
Yes. How did you feel about this Dexterization? Kind of similar to what happens to Sydney in Scream 3 when she's haunted by her mother, which
Mm,
to me was like the worst part of that entire movie. Did you buy it
yeah.
more in this new one?
Yes, that's a great parallel. Um, I I liked it. I you could easily sort of just throw that out. You needed it, and for the way things really come together. And I did like, because you said there's something sinister about it, and it's a whodunit. You're really kind of questioning her motives. Then she's estranged from her sister.
Mhm.
There was just the right amount of mystery around her character where you're thinking maybe there is something that connects her to her father. That's
Right. I think you're right, and it wasn't necessary, to be honest with you. I think I would have preferred it not be there. But at the same time, I love seeing Skeet Ulrich in a Scream film
I
again,
know.
and it wasn't as ham-handed as Maureen Prescott haunting the daughter or her daughter in Scream 3. But at the same time, I felt like it made Billy a little sympathetic in a way that I did not find very appropriate at all, given who Billy Loomis is.
This is like me last week saying I felt bad for Michael Myers,
Right.
which is this. Maybe this is a new thing in horror films where they're really trying you to connect to the villain.
Mm.
And maybe to go outside of here for a second, it kind of goes with television these days.
Mm.
Like we have been rooting for the bad guy uh, on TV shows and other movies now. So maybe there was just something they wanted to humanize about Billy Loomis. Do we feel bad for him because he never got to see his daughter? Do we feel bad for the murders he did years ago.
I don't.
You're
I'm sorry. I'm laying it down here. I do not feel bad for him at all. I don't
all
know
right.
how she could get mojo from a man that very grisly murdered his friends and loved ones like that. I don't know. I wouldn't want to see him if I was her. She takes it kind of like with a grain of salt, and I would find that to
Sure.
be horrifying. And you're right. We were kind of sympathizing a little bit with Michael Myers in the last cast, but at the same time, I feel like Michael Myers is like mentally stunted in a way that
Yeah.
Billy isn't.
Yeah.
He's very savvy. He's very with it, very sane. I feel like.
Yeah, Billy knew what he was doing. They explained his motives. Like,
Right.
were they right? No, but they.
Right. Now,
You're right.
Stu, we'll talk a little bit more about Stu in a second because I find his character much more enigmatic in terms of killers from the first one and their motives, but we can get back to that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the settings because we're going back to Woodsboro in this new one.
Yeah, we actually see them returning to Woodsboro, which I don't know if you caught this. I loved this. When Samantha, or Sam rather, and her boyfriend are driving, Richie,
Yeah.
are driving into downtown Woodsboro, they pass Elm Street.
Oh.
Which is really just another nod. You could just tell from then they're returning to this world that Wes Craven created, and it's just like a nice little hat tilt.
That is a beautiful little meta moment.
Yeah, it was great. Just a really quick glimpse of a street sign. They come back. I don't know if in that.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, do we hear Red Right Hand, which is the like the theme song of the Scream movies? Do we hear that when they return? I'm forgetting now because that would really bring you back.
I know it was in there again, but I can't actually recall the exact moment when we get hit with it.
Maybe we don't hear
but it did give me all the feels to hear that again. It was great. It really did bring me back.
Yeah, it's. I mean, if they didn't include that song, that would have been a huge mistake. But these guys knew what they were doing.
This is a good little tangential moment since you bring up Mr. Craven. Where do you think the whole Scream franchise sits in his IP properties? Like, because he has some of the most iconic properties out there in the horror. We got Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Scream. To me, two of those are in contention for being more iconic than the other. Where do you sit with that?
Well, I personally am a huge Freddy Krueger fan, and one of the first horror films I ever saw was A Nightmare on Elm Street. So that connects with me more. I mean, more nostalgic to that. However, I would probably say the Scream franchise has been more successful.
Yeah.
Financially, and we haven't seen. We have seen. I think I block it out. They tried to bring back Freddy Krueger. It did not work.
Right.
So that right there shows you can bring back a Ghostface because of the way the whole story is set up. You cannot necessarily bring back a Freddy Krueger without Robert Englund. Mm-hmm. And Last House on the Left, they've tried to bring back as well. And the subject matter is, very disturbing.
Yeah.
And a little too close to a lot of people, like as far as triggering.
Yeah, absolutely. The new Hills Have Eyes was pretty darn good, though.
Yes, huge fan of the remake of that. That was almost better than the first.
I think it was.
And different director. I mean, Wes didn't do that. That was Alexander Aja, which is another great director who can breathe new life into a franchise. A lot of people say if they're going to bring back Nightmare on Elm Street, he would be the guy to do it.
I think you hit on something that's really interesting. As a one-off, if it was just Scream versus Nightmare on Elm Street, I think Nightmare on Elm Street is the more potent, profitable, or personally preferred film.
Yeah.
But the nature of Scream and the whodunitness of it lends itself to franchise way better than Freddy Krueger. I don't feel like you're going to get anything new and surprising with Freddy.
That's exactly it. I mean, they actually had to change the character. Freddy got more hilarious. I mean, they had to keep adding humor to it
Right.
to change that character. I mean, you can only do so much with that. With Scream, as it's a whodunit, there's a new person behind the mask every time.
Plus, the motives of some of the Scream killers, I feel like you can at least understand where they're coming from. At the heart of Freddy, we got a kitty fiddler, so that's really tough to get on board with. I don't see how you can ever make him
No,
sympathetic in any way.
no, there's never ever feeling bad for that
No,
guy.
exactly. Anyways, let's get back on track, shall we?
Yeah, yeah. We were talking about the setting.
Right. So we have 3 films that are set in Woodsboro of the 5. And I personally, those 3 are my top 3. I know that might be a little crazy for some, but if I were to rank them, I go 1, 5, 4, 3, 2. Where are you sitting?
Interesting. I go 1, 5, 2, 4, 3.
Interesting. What?
Yeah.
What do you like about 2 so much? Because 2 is my least favorite, and that's your third. It comes after 5 for you, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I
So you bought into
think
Jackie from Roseanne going around and slicing some.
I'm a
some
huge
throats.
Timothy Oliphant fan myself.
He saves the movie.
He's
saves
great.
It. Yeah,
he's great. I think it just seemed like such a natural progression, like from high school to college. I don't know. It just felt like you were kind of going to school with them, like you were kind of growing with them. I think it's just maybe more of like a nostalgic thing for me as well. Yeah. I mean, I will give you that. Aunt Jackie was not the best part. I mean, the reveal at the end of that one in the theater is a bit over the top, very theatrical on purpose. They're on stage. But yeah, I think I just liked it. It felt a little bit closer to the original than the third one.
That makes sense. I think for me, like, I was so hyped about Scream 2 as such a huge fan of Scream 1 when I saw it as a 8th grader, freshman in high school, knocked my socks off. And I remember getting like one of those VHSs that gives you previews of movies to come, because I was working in a video store at the time, and just blown away by the preview for Scream 2 and just so excited to see Randy there talking about the rules of a sequel. And it just didn't really live up to what I wanted. And I really hoped that Randy had been working with the 2 guys in the first one was going to be the killer in the third. I had created such more interesting endings and killers in my head that could be than what I got. And I think that's always in my head going to kind of like be a letdown for me because of that.
Yeah, I see the problem there. Yeah, you built it up too much for yourself.
So Scream 3 is your least favorite then?
Yeah, and I think we can all agree that Gale Weathers' bangs ruined that movie.
Yes, it is. It was really interesting watching the progression of her hair and her style. A little out of control. 2 with the streaks, nice streaks. I mean, even Dewey drops that great line. Hollywood was not quite. It just wasn't as intimate. It felt a little colder. But at the same time, I felt like the supporting cast of 3 surpassed the supporting cast of 2 for me. And I think that's why I kind of like just slightly edge it over it.
Okay. I get that. I totally get that. The whole introduction too of Liev Schreiber's character in number 2.
Cotton Weary.
Yeah, what a name. I'm really glad that didn't kind of resurface in this most recent movie.
I mean, he's a creep. He was such a creepy character throughout. I mean, who knows what he had done? I know he's not a killer, probably, but he just was not a character you could get behind. And he does save the day in Scream 2 as well, which is also makes that sullied in my eyes.
Yeah, he was totally greedy too. Okay.
So talk about the casualties too, because in this one we have the same casualty number as Scream 1, which is interesting. Scream 1 we got 6 deaths. This new Scream we got 6 deaths. Comparatively speaking, you had 8 and 2, 9 and 3, and technically 9 in 4 too, but there was those meta beginnings too, which adds on another 3 kills too, and none of that includes the killer's death.
No,
Did you
no,
think more
no.
or less kills was better?
Oh, I think they should have dialed it up more in this recent one. I
Mm.
think that's what we were there. We were there to see Ghostface. Honestly, we were there to see new, imaginative death scenes. Now there were a couple good ones. I wasn't so sure how, and I know there's two death scenes we're going to talk about here.
Yeah.
I wasn't so sure how the character Wes, which is another nod to Wes Craven there. They actually named the
Ah,
character Wes, whose mother was Deputy Judy Hicks. When he gets stabbed in the neck, the knife goes through and then all the way into the back.
yeah.
I really feel like, as painful as that looked, it still could have been um, a survival
You
moment there.
could have
Like, oh,
survived that?
he could. I feel like we could have seen a revival. We didn't see like a slice across. You know, we
That's
saw it
true.
through it, and it didn't look like it went through any major. I mean,
That's a good point. For me, I thought it was really effective in how slow it was and what a
yes,
build that kill was.
yes, yes.
Um,
Visually, it was great.
Especially because it kind of pulled the rug out from us thinking he was going to go first, and when his mom was the one actually to end up biting it first. I see what
Yeah.
you're saying. It seemed like, but I think they had to have gotten that artery there in the neck. I
Mhm.
was waiting for him to like slash it out, because it went
I
in
was waiting for
and then it
that
came
too.
out, and I was thinking he was just going to like pull the knife out the wrong way, but they just cut instead. Or does he just
Yeah,
kind of pull it out normally? I'm trying to remember back to that
I
moment.
think it just comes out normally.
Okay.
I think I
There's
was waiting
something
for
to be
something.
left wanting for that. You're right about that.
Yeah, yeah. I was also I'd have to go back and rewatch the movies again to see how many daytime deaths usually happen in these films, because uh Deputy Judy Hicks running up to her doorstep gets like popped right in the stomach
Right.
with that knife.
And how does
And
none of the neighbors see this happen?
I know, that's what I was wondering.
Nobody's
I'm like,
walking
I'm
around.
waiting for some sort of Karen or something to show up. Like some sort of neighborhood Karen to start going after Ghostface and record it with her phone or something. I was waiting for that as well. And again, yeah, to my point, I don't know if it's something they do a lot, the daytime death scene.
And I found it scarier. Uh,
Absolutely.
I appreciated that because ultimately, when we have the big reveal death, like the biggest death in it, we'll really reveal that now is Deputy Dewey. We lose one of the OGs here.
Yes.
But that
Yes.
takes place in a hospital that somehow, like the neighborhood that Detective Hicks or Sheriff Hicks lives in, is completely abandoned. Nobody's there. Nobody's around except for that one cop that was supposed to be watching over that had been killed.
Right.
But there's
Right.
no other patients. There's not a nurse to be seen. It was that
So
maddened me.
I hear what you're saying, and usually hospitals aren't dark like that either. There was a line though after the cafeteria scare where we see Ghostface go after Sam. There
Mm.
was a line where they mentioned how they're going to move
Oh.
Tara, her sister, to a private floor.
Oh, you're
Now,
right.
I know. I was thinking the same thing, and it actually occurred to me. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. They did say that. They set this
Okay.
up. It wasn't completely ridiculous. However, it was ridiculous in the sense that there still wasn't a nurse or somebody around. It just seemed like they turned the lights off, and they're like, okay, you'll get better. Just take a nap.
Plus, I mean, logically speaking, I'm not sure how being segregated alone makes more sense than having a bunch of other patients around there that could
Right,
identify
right,
people.
right. It
And
was just a setup for a payoff for
right,
a fight scene there.
which was fun.
Um,
It was fun.
it was. I will say this though, and this is one of those. It's a frustrating thing for me in this franchise when you don't know who Ghostface is. That part doesn't bother me. I'm wondering though if the killer, who would have been, spoiler here,
In outfit,
in outfit, would have been
technically,
Amber.
yes, she
It
seemed
would
pretty
have been
tough.
Amber.
She seemed
She
pretty
seemed
tough in that
very
moment.
strong, and again, I don't know how strong she is. I'm sure she is. This is nothing to do with like a gender thing here, but
Right.
she did look pretty small in stature. And then
Uh-huh.
if you go back, it didn't seem
I'm with you.
as believable that
I'm
Dewey.
with
I
you.
mean, okay. And the other thing though,
I mean, she guts Dewey, or yeah, Dewey on both sides, right? She goes up from the back and the
yes,
front with two different knives.
which
She's
was
like
very
lifting
cool.
Dewey's weight. That's insane
I
to me.
know. Yeah.
She's
And we know that's not Jack Quaid, Richie's
right.
character, because he's there. He's got this is one of those telltale signs too in a Scream movie. When somebody gets cut and it's just like a tiny little slash, you're like,
arm.
possible killer here. But the other thing that bothered me about that scene was that, and I know it was set up for the whole rules, like you gotta shoot him in the head. He's like, I'm gonna go back. You gotta shoot him in the head, or they will come back. So we know that Dewey has shot Amber now twice and gone through the glass window. I just kind of wish there was a payoff later in the movie where we knew that she had some sort of bulletproof vest on or something.
I think you just got to take that for granted now with these characters. Plus, you just got to remember they are friends with Wes, so she would have access to maybe a bulletproof vest since his mom is a cop. I'm you know, you're gonna have to make these leaps on your own. But I agree.
And
in
listen,
that moment, I was like,
fan.
Dewey, why didn't you shoot her in the head? And I knew he was doomed when he gets everybody to the elevator. He's like, oh, yeah, Sidney tells me I got to do this. I'm going to go shoot him in the head now.
And I'm not taking this as like a flaw in the movie. It's just, one of those things where I'm like, they did such a good job of explaining everything else. Yeah, and they usually, in the end scene where it's almost like the Bond villain explaining the plan and how they did everything, just maybe more information could have been provided then, where they're like, because then that could have justified their deaths even more so by not having those special things at the end.
We do lose Wes and his mom prior to that scene, correct?
Yes.
So he is in the house of the cop right before that goes down.
Yeah, because we know that the sheriff or the deputy is dead. And Sam's like, what are you to the one cop? He's like, what are you doing here? Why did you? He's like, well, I heard about the deputy. And you're like, so you abandoned your post?
That poor character.
I know.
Yeah, he was made to look like a rube.
He was great.
For sure.
He was great.
He was fine, but yeah.
That was just to confirm the timeline, though. So we know that yes,
right.
They got to go to the hospital after that.
Yeah.
I'm
going to just suspend the disbelief. I think there's bigger issues in previous movies. I can get past this one.
There are, and I don't mean to knock this. It's just like, again, I'm a horror fan, and I love not having to explain things sometimes. Like, well, it's a horror movie. We just talked about this last week too. It's a bit fantastical, It's like when Michael Myers has some superpowers, it is what it is.
Exactly. This might be a good time to then talk about the killers and compare them to those that have killed before. Because as you mentioned, we have Amber, and then Amber's working with the son of Meg Ryan and Dennis Quaid.
Jack Quaid, who's really great on The Boys as well.
My gosh. Do you think he sought out this part because he's so jealous of Anthony Starr in The Boys and how sinister he gets to be and what an amazing part that is as Homelander? Because if I was, what's his character's name in The Boys?
Oh, that's a great
I can't
question.
recall. But if I was working with Anthony Starr, who just eats up every freaking scene that he's in, I would be jealous and want to. Huey. Yes, Huey. I'd want a taste of that. So I thought he did good.
Right.
I got to admit, going into it, when I did my guess, I'm like, he seems like the best one that could seem innocent, that could then turn it around and like you'd believe his sinistry. So I was kind of leaning toward him being the killer going into it, honestly. But that's okay because I didn't see the other killer coming.
I personally loved when he gives props to Dewey. He's like, Dewey called it from the beginning. It's the boyfriend. It's the love interest.
Right.
That was great.
That was that. And as also with Amber calling in the opening sequence, like you think the phone was cloned, but it wasn't. It was just her. And for once, it's like, it's matter of fact. You know what I mean? It's like we're expecting something to be convoluted and contrived, but no, take it at face value in this one, which I thought was kind of an interesting twist in itself. I dug it.
To go back to the settings really quick, let's talk about the opening scene in the house, because it's definitely reminiscent. They're even talking about the first movie, um, the thing I loved about it the most was they took this moment as an opportunity to talk about how different the technology has become
Right.
from 2022 to 1990. The original Scream came out in
96.
96. Yeah. Uh, there's a home security system that you can control from your phone now. You
Right.
can clone a phone.
Right.
I really liked that setup. I really liked also that they show you exactly where the character
Oh, when you
Tara.
track. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that her injuries. We knew later that her hand was cut straight through, so she can't do the
Right.
wheelchair. We saw him stomp on her ankle, which was a very disturbing ankle crack too. But
Oh my
I
goodness.
really
Misery
liked.
style.
Yes, it was exactly reminiscent of Misery. I really loved this small kitchen front door house scene that was just that's exactly what Scream was. So I really appreciated that as far as the setting goes to reminisce the opening with
I
Drew
completely
Barrymore.
agree, but at the same time, it did kind of amplify it and bring it to the present, in that she wasn't counting on a boyfriend to come save her ass like Drew
Oh
Barrymore
yeah,
is. You know what I mean? She's an
yeah,
independent woman, and she kicks ass in a way that Drew Barrymore lets herself get just slaughtered compared to Jenna Ortega. Because this is the first time I've seen her, and I actually thought she was one of the highlights of the movie. She was
agreed.
one of the stronger actresses, I feel like, of the clan, the group. I
I
was a
agree.
little shocked that she survived that initial killing, but at the
I
same
know.
time, I thought it was great in that she was the single woman kicking butt, and in all the other opening sequences, everyone dies, you know? So for
Yeah,
this is the
uh,
first one to survive and then be an integral character throughout the rest of the movie.
agreed. And there was in that opening scene when you see her getting stabbed, you could see that almost like they were they were doing it on purpose. They were like, well, I'm going to stab you in this organ. I'm going to stab you. I'm
Right.
going to stab you in the kidneys. I'm going to stab you here. And then later on, they make a reference to it and like, I'm going to hit some of those other vital organs I
Right.
missed. Or yeah, it was very precise and meticulous
It was.
stabbing.
That's one of those scenarios where I wish I hadn't seen it in the previews. I wish I could
Oh,
avoid previews, you know, because I think it would
yeah,
have been more effective for me. But I did
I
like it a
agree with
lot.
that.
Why does she have a home line? Was that just an homage to the first one? But that was another thing. Like, who has a landline still? What's that
I
about?
know. It's not impossible. It is
I
almost
know.
one of those weird things where you're wondering, like, do young people even know what a landline is? Because everything is on a iPhone or a Samsung. Um, I know personally, though, from somebody who has bought cable in the last couple of years, that they're still trying to bundle a
Oh
landline
my
with a
gosh.
home security system. So maybe
Yeah.
it was that.
I mean, I guess in
Uh,
a storm or something, you might need it, or you know, if you're
yeah,
in an emergency, I guess it does make
yeah,
sense. But yeah, I like your
yeah,
discussion of the technology and how it really has evolved, because you have kind of the anonymity of just phones in themselves in that
yeah,
first one. Scream 3 plays with technology that I don't even know exists, to be able
right,
to mimic somebody else's voice as well as that
yeah,
little device did. That
yeah.
seemed a little too much
Well,
for me. I haven't seen anything like
well,
that.
how about cut back to the hospital scene? We see Ghostface trigger a
Mm.
voice manipulator in the costume.
And that was also a camera, though. That was a camera, because remember, one of
Oh
their big
yeah,
things is they wanted people to be able to watch it
yeah,
all
you're right.
happen.
You're right, but it almost sounded like it was booting up, like
You're
they
right.
activated it.
That's true.
It's
That's
like
very
they've
true.
got one of those suits like Batman can do that in his suit.
No, that's a good point. And then, of course, 4, you had the live streaming stuff happening too. That's where they really
Yes.
pushed that one big time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But
technology
that's
is
just it though. I think in this day and age, if you want to write a successful horror movie, you have to establish from the get go what's going on with the cell phones, right? Because the number
Mm,
one thing people are going to question as an audience later, like, why wouldn't they just call the cops? Why wouldn't
yeah,
they just do this? So you almost have to, as part of your just like your whole formula, figure out what's going on with the technology, because they're hoops you got to jump through now. You've got
that's
to
very
figure out
true.
the audience is going to be upset if they're just like, why wouldn't they call the
I think that's
cops?
why a lot of horrors lately don't have contemporary settings and go back 20, 30
I
years, so that they don't have to deal with that issue.
I agree. I agree.
Actually, one other technology moment in the newest one I thought was fun but could have been executed way better. It's when Chad is using the tracker on his phone to try and find his girlfriend
Oh,
to apologize to her
yeah.
in
Yeah.
like a backyard that seemed really small, but somehow they couldn't see each other 10 feet away. I thought the concept was great, but I didn't necessarily buy into the space in which they were trying to utilize this, a phone tracker, so they could see
I
that the
agree.
killer was coming closer to him. And
Yeah.
good
It
concept,
was a
poor execution.
exactly. Great gimmick. We know, like, oh, he's getting closer. They should be right there. And then, yeah. And then the character's like, nope. It turns around. And I love the twins' characters for that
Oh,
reason alone.
amazing.
They were so like, this guy is wanting to sleep with his new girlfriend so badly that when she says, let's go sleep together, he's like, nope.
Because I think you're the killer, maybe. You could
Are
be, I
you
don't know.
kidding me? Which was
That was
just
great.
very funny. Very
I gotta
funny.
give it to him in that these jock characters in these movies are usually very unlikable. And the
Yeah.
first half, the first quarter of the film, I didn't really like him. The way he treats that kind of like scuzz bucket ex of his girlfriend.
Right.
It was a little, machismo, not to my liking, but he is softened by having that sister and being twins with her, and her being, for me, the character that stole the movie. Personally, I thought
Agreed.
she was
Yeah.
hilarious. She's in
Oh, yeah.
Yellow Jackets. If you haven't been watching
I've
Yellow
heard.
Jackets, she's amazing in that too. Really, really strong
I've
actress. But
I've heard that.
I think back to like I hated Jerry O'Connell in 2 when he's
Yeah.
like, "I'm gonna give you my frat necklace or pin or whatever it was." It was just
Yeah.
they were so stereotypical. At least this guy had some layers to him. But
Yeah.
how did he survive? I thought he was sliced and diced worse than like anybody else in the film,
Same.
next to Dewey,
Same.
of course. But I
I
didn't
think
buy his living through it, other than maybe he will be in Scream 2 too.
bingo. Bingo. I think that is exactly it. I think there are some things that happen in this movie. They've got us scratching our heads. You had brought up before we started recording. You brought up a death scene, and I want to talk about that. A death scene of a character that seemed kind of
superfluous. Like
exactly.
why were they there?
So we're talking about the Vince character,
Yeah.
played by Kyle Gallner, who is as you mentioned, the scuzz bucket. He is the epitome of a 1950s greaser. He's got a muscle car. He's got a switchblade. His hair slicked back. And he was going up against the guy in the Letterman jacket. Like, what's going on here? Are we watching West Side Story?
Right. And this character had been out with his girlfriend prior during some little affair during the summer.
Yeah. Some little summer fling. And we see him peeing against the wall. And then we see his car start up. And he assumes it's the jock, the twin.
Right, because
Chad.
they had just had an altercation.
Yes. Which, again, you look at these characters' names. Chad is the jock. Vince is this greaser character.
Right, exactly.
Which is just very, like, Vinny Barbarino here. Right. And he's, he's killed off. See the first big death scene in the movie? I'm trying to...
because the intro, you don't actually lose anyone.
Right, you don't see anyone die.
He's the first one to die. You're right.
To start scaring people, aside from the sister being in the hospital, reporting that someone's in the Ghostface mask.
Right.
We just assume that Vince is then killed by the Ghostface character because it's a death in this town, and it's been 11 years. So... what do we think's going on with that character? Was it necessary, or is it something we're going to get a payoff in a sequel?
I'm thinking maybe, because as I was asking you, why this guy, why was he killed? Because it's not like Chad was the killer and was pissed off, and it's not like the girl he was with had anything to do with the murders either. I thought she was kind of a throwaway character as well, other than the fun banter between her and Chad of whether or not she was the killer. And that psycho moment she has with that the twin sister toward the end, where she comes off really freaky.
Very aggressive. Very aggressive. So
but I'm thinking maybe it could have been a throw the blame elsewhere kill sort of thing.
A misdirect.
A misdirect. Exactly.
Yeah.
That being said, I loved the way he was killed because it was the most precise, surgical, I guess is the word I used prior. Surgical kill. It's just one little stab to the neck at like
Yeah.
the perfect
Oh,
spot.
it was a pop. It was like a pop, like boop.
There was nothing like passionate about it. It just felt really like one and done. And then,
Yeah.
Ghostface
Was it
sauntered
part
off.
of exactly? Was it part of a plan that they were recreating something? You know, were they recreating just the fear in this town?
Mm,
Were they trying to make you look like within this circle? Because I was expecting Deputy Judy to go to Chad and say, you know, I heard you were the last one who had an altercation with Vince in the bar. And then he
right,
ends up dead. We didn't even question you.
right. Or to tie Vince to Sam because they were trying to set up Sam as the killer.
Right,
So if you
right.
had somehow tied her to this character of old, like they had a past
Yeah, she just
kind
wanted
of
to get rid of
conflict,
him.
but it didn't make sense to me. But you had mentioned you saw Ghostface like run in the background. I didn't even see that moment.
Yeah, yeah. There was a really great scene when you see Vince peeing against the wall, and this is an extreme wide shot. We see him back there, and we're like, we know what he's doing. And then very quickly across the screen, we see like the ghost face. It's almost like a witch's costume from the bottom of the neck down.
Right.
You know, whatever you want to call this cape-like. What does Ghostface wear?
I think it's
What
a
is
it's
that?
a ghost / Grim Reaper combo. That's the way
Cool.
I've always
Yeah.
looked at it.
Okay.
He's like the Grim Reaper to me, but like a
Yeah.
goofy
Okay.
one, like one for
Yeah.
this generation. I
Yeah.
agree. I always found it not the scariest of
No.
costumes, but really, I
But
don't think the movie's more about the whodunit stuff than
well,
the look of the killer.
exactly. And further in their defense, it does cover up any
Defining
potential
features at all.
gender
True.
defining features. Yes.
And the Grim Reaper
So
thing hasn't really been used in other horrors, so I like that, but it is such the cheesy with the big O. It's just death is coming for you. You know what I mean? That's the way I kind of buy into it.
yeah.
Have
Yeah.
you watched the Scream TV series? There's 3 seasons of it.
I never watched it. No.
Wow. In the first 2 series, they don't use that mask. They use a
I heard about that.
much more plain, almost like a paper mache sort of situation mask, which I found actually more ominous than this one. But I mean, you can't not love Ghostface mask.
Right.
You can't.
Right.
It's fun.
Yeah,
Have you worn one
so-
though? Have you ever worn one? Because I got one here for fun, and I don't know how
I have
would
one as
slice
well.
and dice people in that thing. I can't see very
No.
well out of it. That'd be
No.
tough.
They have to have a better mask than what we have. Now, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You just mentioned that you had watched the TV show. Were there any Easter eggs to the TV show in here, or do they completely just
Not that I was aware of. I
discard
think
that?
it's completely
Okay.
disregarded. That being said, the TV
Okay.
show has some of the most grisly kills out of even more so than the movies. Like,
Okay.
like stuff that you wish you hadn't seen almost, especially in the
Right.
first season. But sadly in the TV show, there's a lot of uneven casting and performances that really it makes it feel B. And with the exception, maybe,
Understood.
was there anything that brought it down for you performance-wise in this new Scream? Was there any weak link?
I don't think so. I found a lot of the characters likable, funny at times when they needed to be. I thought Jack Quaid was super funny and misdirecting in a great way. There were some times where I was a little frustrated with, I guess, Gail's character. But that might have been my weakest link.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like, we almost didn't need her to come back.
No. Except, what's interesting, you get to see the relationship between her and Dewey and how it's devolved.
Correct.
But what I think is even more of an important relationship is her and Sydney. And I feel like those two working together in the way that they did in this one was heads and tails far and wide different than the first Scream.
100%. They have come a long way. And Gail even acknowledges that she might be the reason that this all started, which is, Sydney was like, no. I'm like, yes.
Absolutely. Because if you think back to
definitely
Scream 2,
pushed this.
Mickey's motive is stardom, right?
Yeah.
And you know that Jackie from Roseanne Laurie Metcalf could not have done all the kills on her own. So she needed somebody with a good enough motive to actually do some of the harder kills for her. So you're right. I think Gail is the reason there were subsequent movies.
Yeah. Yeah. And they acknowledge that. And I personally thought they were going to kill her off as well.
I would have been okay with that.
I would have been okay with that
That's
as well.
me,
But like
though.
that scene where she gets shot in the stomach.
Yeah.
How I mean, there's a lot of the deaths. Like, how did they survive? How did
I don't
anybody
know.
survive any of these wounds?
I don't know. Yeah, even Sydney took some serious stabs there and is just like walking around
Stabs.
nonchalant at the end. I'm like,
But
really? Not
let
hurting
me
at all?
point out that Ghostface almost always goes for the gut.
True. Because it's the most
Almost.
painful.
Oh yeah, and one of the worst deaths you could get. I mean,
Yes.
if Ghostface isn't stabbing you in the gut, you're probably getting a throat slit or something. But a
The most painful
lot
because
of
you're suffering through it, but I do feel like those are wounds that you could heal from more so than other
exactly, it's
times.
one of those confusing wounds where you're like, well, what did they hit? Right?
Right.
We know they didn't get shot in the head. If you get stabbed in the stomach, there's a good chance that it's a 50-50 from an audience point of view, right? Which is why they do it. I will say, and I'm gonna do something physically here, so you can't if you're listening. I'm talking about the classic knives. Grab the blade,
Oh, yeah.
wipe the blood off. There was some really great, just like that's what Ghostface does. And there was I think there's like a couple shots in this movie where they just really like emphasize it, and
Mhm.
and it was great. It almost
Yeah.
gave you like goosebumps, you know?
Absolutely. It's a staple.
Yeah.
It's such a great
Yeah.
image. Yeah, I was impressed with that as well. We kind of skipped over whether or not we're on board with our motive of the killers in this new one. So you got
Okay,
Richie and Amber,
yeah.
who, like in 4, are lover killers, sorta, because
Yeah,
even though in 4 it was really seemed contrived that Charlie, we have Culkin with Emma Roberts,
yeah,
that
with
I
the
didn't
goth
buy.
kid for yeah. Now I will say in this movie, uh, there's got to be some sort of weird age gap here. This kind of was
Yes.
disturbing. Like Jack Quaid met a girl on Reddit, convinced her to help him like murder people,
Right.
but also how old are you guys? Because at one point he's in the house party and they're calling like someone's weird dad is,
Yes.
which made me laugh.
No.
But also at the same time, isn't she in like high school?
That is uncomfortable. I mean,
What's going on here, man?
He became super creepy in the sexual sense, even when he's rubbing into Sam like it wasn't hard to get in your pants, girl, at the end.
Right. Right.
Yeah, he's a total skis ball. But I did love that she lived in Stu's house, and that is what kind of warped her mind and made her
Yeah.
such a stab fanatic, because it is really all about toxic fandom, right? And them having expected more from the Stab series subsequent to the first film, similar to how a lot of people feel about the Scream series.
Let's talk about really quick right there is that the defining word of this movie could be summed up with meta.
Right.
Everything is meta. And in real life, you can rent Stu Macher's house as an Airbnb.
What? I didn't know that.
Yes, you can rent that house. I'm like, so if you really want to go meta here, you could be somebody who spends the weekend in Stu Macher's house and then decides to go out and murder people.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
so
is the
talk
epitome
about
of that
meta.
My goodness. But I kind of like bought into like it is kind of a haunted house effect on Amber.
Yeah.
And Amber, have you seen her in she's in this Good Things, or it's Better Things on FX. She's the oldest daughter, and she's kind of like a brat in that one. I thought she looked scary. You know, she looks like someone that could have had her mind perverted by living in Stu's house and romanticizing what happened there.
Oh, I think the casting was great, especially for her. There was something that was like, she sold you on being this very overprotective friend, but then to do like a complete flip and just be somebody who was basically using this girl for friendship just so she could get her to a point in this maniacal plan to kill her where it was meant a little bit more. Yeah,
did you like her reveal? When ultimately Liv is just pleading, I'm not the killer, and she's like,
and then boom,
I know.
and then I am.
Yeah, she's like,
yeah,
I know.
she's got that great kill shot in the head. She's like, I know, I am. I mean, yeah, it was good because I think in that moment with that line of delivery, it really showed you that she had no remorse, like almost no feelings to this. Killing has become very easy for her to do. I don't know if this was like the first week she's been killing. She's really good at it.
I think it was a little commentary on as high school instructor. Oh,
Yeah.
high school girls, their emotions kind of like flux sometimes like that. And I thought it was really pinpointed whenever she had the upper hand in that final scene and didn't. She was like, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know I was," you
Oh
know what I mean?
man,
She
she
kept
flip
flip
flops a couple
flopping
times there.
so
Yes.
so effectively. Like I bought that she thought she could
Yeah.
talk her way out of it with Gail and Sydney when
Yeah.
they saw behind the mask. They saw right through her, which I
Yeah.
thought
I
was
mean,
great.
she is a sociopath
Yes.
who could just keep flipping back and forth. Like that was like to show no emotions and then turn on the waterworks. That's really, really creepy.
I agree. Let's get to a grander sense of this motive, and maybe we can look back at the motives of the previous ones. I
Okay.
buy that Amber might have been seduced by Richie and have fallen
Yes.
into doing the deeds that Richie wants out of, romantic feelings, right? In
Yes.
kind of a
Yes.
similar way to, it could be argued Stu was in love with Billy in the first one. What the hell was Stu's motive in the first one?
Right. Right.
He's doing what Billy wants, slicing and dicing without a clear motive for me.
Correct. Um, yes, 100%. I think it was more like, hey, look, I'll do anything to be your friend. This is cool because you said it's cool. Like, yeah,
Yeah. And I almost felt like Amber had more of a reason to be a toady because there was that sexual element to it. Um,
yeah.
but do you buy Richie being this super fan that's going to go to those lengths? Is this something
Well,
it's
here I'll tell
fun,
you.
but is it buyable?
I don't think as much as we see him in the movie, I don't think we learned anything real about him. And I
Mm,
think in the first movie, when you look at like Billy and Stu, I think we saw a little bit more into their lives. So I mean, I see what you're saying, and now that you pose that question, I don't know. I don't know if I buy it. Um, I will say it was interesting to see him. I mean, he basically was a super horror fan or movie fan,
right.
like Jamie Kennedy's character,
Hmm.
but who actually is trying to create the narrative. Um,
And essentially make the next stab movie watchable. And that's where
yeah,
it kind of
yeah,
loses me a little bit. It's like, okay, I understand why
yeah.
Amber's
That
doing it. She's being manipulated by an older man, but I mean, I didn't see the sociopath in him that you see in other killers in the past until the reveal. And
yeah,
it didn't have the grounding I needed. It was fun, and I get it.
yeah,
And the series is all about meta-ness, and that is the next logical place you go, I guess, with a killer motive. But you're right, and especially because you get so much misdirection with his character, and when we see him alone, he's always watching these stab movies like it's his first time.
yeah. You're right.
So I don't know. The misdirect was a little heavy-handed, I feel like.
No, I agree. I agree. I almost wish we didn't kill him off. Who knows what happens? I mean, I think we know she really does a number on him at the end. But yeah, I wish we could have learned more about him or his family or where he's from. Like, do we know
Right.
where he's from? He's just a
No.
Stab fan, and we see that he had meet from the very beginning of the movie. Our second major scene outside the bowling alley where they're both working at a bowling alley.
Right.
Um,
Which kind of says a lot about their characters as well. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
feel like somebody who's working at a bowling alley is going to be able to mastermind. I mean, no,
Or
I'm
just
just saying,
wasted talent, I guess.
yeah, I don't know. It seemed a little inconsistent characterization wise, but that was
Yeah,
still fun. It was. Yeah,
it was.
who had the best motive out of all the killers? Would you say? Because just a quick rundown here: Billy and Stu, you got revenge and then loyalty/fun. Mickey and Debbie, you got stardom and revenge. Roman, you could
Revenge,
argue, is
right.
jealousy of his sister, right? More than anything, and not getting his mommy issues. Um, Charlie and Jill were both stardom. You could say maybe Charlie was in it also to get a little Emma Roberts loving. And then this one was straight fandom. This has the most unique of all of
It
the motives.
agreed.
You got to give it that.
Um,
But maybe the uniqueness makes it the least believable.
Man, that is a really, really good question. And I don't know. I mean, with the first Scream, they definitely have that revenge motive, which to me, not that it's justified, but makes sense for their
Right.
motive.
Yeah.
Um, Again, it's not right, but it might be the best reason. I mean,
Yeah.
because all that scandal going on with the sexual scandal um, between Sydney's mom. Yeah, I think that's my final answer.
I'm with
Billy.
you. I think Billy specifically has the best motive. Stu is probably my favorite
Yeah,
killer in the whole series, even though his motive may
yeah,
be the weakest out of everyone in it. But I do feel like that this new movie almost hurts Billy's credibility in his motive, because he's shown to be kind of a sexual creature himself, like he was
sure.
so chastising for Sydney's mom for, because we find out he's had this kid with Sam's mom, and I don't know. He was definitely getting around the block in
Yeah,
Woodsboro.
he's definitely a hypocrite for somebody who's going for revenge for infidelity. Here he is. I mean, obviously not married, but ruining lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna try and be nice to our audience this time and not hit them with too much. So we're gonna do let's do a
Yeah.
quick rapid fire questions here. We're not gonna dwell too much on some of these.
Okay.
So out of all the screams, do you remember like seeing them in any specific spot or any memories with each of them?
I know this probably hits you more because I think you said you saw this at the theater. I think I have almost rented every Scream movie, and this was the first one I saw in the theater. I couldn't tell you why. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the
Yeah.
horror genre, the Scream franchise. I couldn't tell you why. I think nostalgic, like the first one, I will watch it every year. I will watch it every Halloween.
It's
I
very
will
rewatchable.
rewatch it every year.
And you're right.
Yes,
I think I asked
yes.
this question selfishly because I was eighth
No,
grade. I go to the Ogden Six in Naperville with the fam, which sadly I don't think is there anymore. And my mom took my sisters to go see some Disney movie, and I'm like, I'm too cool for this. And she
yeah.
didn't know what she was doing, but she's like, all right, well, why don't you go see this spooky movie all by yourself? So I sat as like a 13-year-old all by myself in the theater watching Scream 1, and it was life-changing. You know what I mean? I actually
Absolutely.
kind of was relating a little bit with Richie, not the murderous part of him, but how much
Oh,
that movie really impacted my taste because it hit
yeah.
at such an important time to me. I know I saw the rest in the theater too, but I don't have that same stark memory. I remember going to see that first one vividly.
Okay. Yeah.
Who did you say you think stole the film in this new one?
And this new one, I think Sam did. For me, Sam
Huh?
did for her performance. I know you just said it was the
Yeah,
twin
Mindy.
sister.
It was
I thought she was great. I am looking at this as more of like a breakout star thing. I think we're gonna see. I think we're gonna
Laura
see
Cabrera, because she was
Sam.
in The Heights, right? That was a big hit recently, and she was the
Yeah,
star
I did
in The
not
Heights.
see that, but I think she's a fantastic actor, and I hope we see her carry this torch and become the new star of the Scream franchise.
I'd
So
be okay with that. I
that's
thought
why I think she stole. Yeah.
she was good. She was good. Can the franchise persist? If so, where do you think it's going to go?
Yes, I do. I think, what was really interesting is that we didn't get to see Sam's mother, which was conveniently out of town for work. Now, there's the whole time I'm trying to think while I'm watching this movie. Hopefully, it wasn't too distracting for me. I'm like, could she be a character that we met in the first movie as a side character?
Interesting.
Like I think there's a really fun way for this family to try to come back together. Especially the sisters. Maybe we see the dad come
The
back.
dad, I'm curious about the dad because he
Yeah.
left immediately. The significance of it being Billy Loomis's kid and being lied to about that. The dad has motive for going crazy.
Right. So I'd like to see this family try to resettle back down in Woodsboro and then, just not be able to do this because someone else is going to get upset by them coming back together.
I could see that. What do you think about the reappearance of Jamie Kennedy's sister, Heather Mazzaro?
You know what? I think it was a nice fan
Loved
thing
it.
to do.
I loved it. It was great.
I think when she walks on, even if she was trying to be serious, I wouldn't have not have been able to take that serious. I think I had an audible laugh when she came out on screen.
Yes.
And she's just trying to be that mom who wants to provide like for her kids and her friends, and they're like, "Mom," you know,
Right.
like it was fun, you know.
It was a delight. That whole scene
scene-
at their house, at the Meeks' house, I thought was a blast. Where Wes is still alive at this point, and really, he essentially breaks down Dewey's character and how he's crawled into a bottle, and Dewey's like, maybe you are the killer because that
I
cut
think he
deep.
actually exactly that cut deep. Yeah,
love that.
you know, I could also say as my runner-up that Dewey really stole the show.
Oh, he's so good. Yeah,
he's so good. He was so good. It was I'm just glad he went out fighting. You know,
he has one of the most memorable deaths in the entire series. So
yeah,
it was a good way to
hero.
go. What's your favorite death in all of them?
Oh wow. Man, do you have one off the top of head?
I mean, I don't think you can beat Drew Barrymore's, but my secondary one would be from Scream 4, Anthony Perkins. He's one of the cops, and he gets stabbed right in the forehead while he's in the car with Adam Brody.
And he still tries to move. Well, yeah.
That was my favorite. That was.
I think if I had to, I would say probably the garage door in the first one.
Poor Tatum.
With
Rose McGowan.
I think Rose McGowan, because a garage door should never do that, but I thought it was fun. Like,
yeah.
I think it's one of the most memorable scenes.
It
in
is
that
a very
movie.
memorable kill. 100%.
Yeah.
And then you know what?
Terrible way to go.
I'm thinking that was the rapid fire. Oh yeah, here's the final one. Do you think one or more killers is better? We'll end it on that note.
I like more killers, and I'll tell you why. Because they need to justify that relationship. I mean, in this one, it was really kind of disturbing. They took this really new spin on it, where they met on Reddit.
That was cool. That was such a nice call out to Reddit. I did dig that.
It was. There was a lot of nice. Yeah. It does. I personally like multiple killers. It also keeps you guessing. You're like, it might be him, and it might be her, or it might be him, and you just have to try to be like, but why? And it just really kind of keeps that whole. Is probably why this franchise has done so well. It's different from than other slashers, you know?
That's
multiple slashers. Yeah.
Because you can see the killer in a scene while another killer's killing, and that really throws you off and keeps you guessing. I guess I'm with you. I prefer so far 2 killers, but I feel like if they could pull off one killer and do it well, where it's still as effective, then I would want to see that movie. You know, they didn't do it that well in Scream 3, but if they could, my goodness.
If they could pull it off too, yeah, I think everyone would be really satisfied with that. Let's see, maybe that's part of the sequel. Maybe it's the dad. Calling it now. The dad's the killer in the new one. Don't even bother seeing it.
That is a good guess. I'm on board.
Yeah.
Well,
that was great.
It was great. I think we hit all our bases.
I think so too. And I think what a great way to start off January 2022 with a good horror movie.
Yes, very simple.
And a return to a franchise. Like there's hope. There's hope for other franchises that want new life. And Scream just showed you that it's possible.
And there's a number of those this year too, which we'll talk about in the next cast.
And the next episode. All right. We'll see you guys next time. Follow us on all the social media channels. And don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends.
Pasta la vista, babies.